Hello everybody, welcome back. Happy Wisdom Wednesday. So the past few days, I've been feeling a little bit under the weather, as I think a lot of people are this time of year, especially in New York. I know the weather's going back and forth from being freezing cold to warm like spring, back to freezing cold, then raining, then suddenly it's snowing, which doesn't help anybody's health. So I think a lot of people, their mindset, I know especially for me, I think a lot of people are the same way. When you get sick at first, especially with something like a cold or something that seems kind of minor like that, you don't like stop your whole life and say, oh, I have to rest, I have to get better, I'm so sick. Most of the time, I think for most people, they say, oh, it's just a cold, I don't want to take a sick day, I have too much to do, like I have to go into work, I have to do this, I have to do that, I don't have time to like sit down and just take care of myself, it's just a cold, it's not a big deal, I'll be fine, I can make it through. But usually what ends up happening from that is that we just continue spiraling downwards and getting sicker until we're to a point where we really can't keep on going and ignoring the fact that we're sick. And we have to then take some time for some self-care. You have to lay down in bed, you have to, sleep a little extra, drink some extra water, you might have some soup, do things to take care of yourself to try to make yourself better. The same kind of thing applies to us spiritually, and I've been thinking about this a lot these past couple of days, especially leading into Lent. Lent begins a week from today. Ash Wednesday is next Wednesday. And I feel like that's kind of a good time to address this. So a lot of times, spiritually, we're sick, we have a cold, we're not up to 100%, we're not functioning at full capacity, but we just say, oh, well, it's not that bad. I just have a few little venial sins. Like, they're not that big a deal. I'll be fine. I'll just keep on going. I don't have time to, go to confession or to pray about it or to try to rectify the situation. It'll be fine, though. It's not that big a deal. I'm just going to go about my everyday life anyway, and it'll go away. And the fact is that it doesn't go away the same way as when we ignore a cold. It just usually ends up getting worse. That same thing happens to us spiritually. When we ignore the little things that don't seem like a big deal, they end up compounding and becoming something that's dragging us down spiritually, and we're not working at our best capacity. So what do we have to do then? The same thing we have to do when we get sick. We have to take time to make an effort to make ourselves better. We have to do things to care for ourselves, invest in some special self-care time. The same way that we do that physically when we're sick, we have to do that spiritually when we're a little under the weather spiritually. We have to take time to put more effort into setting aside time to pray. We have to be more intentional about seeking out the sacraments, about going to communion, about going to confession. We need to do things that are going to help us to get better spiritually, right? We need to seek out graces, which are basically like the things that help us feel better from a cold. It's like drinking chicken noodle soup for your soul, is seeking out these graces. So I would challenge you to start thinking about that as we're gearing up for Lent, because Lent is, I think, the number one best time for us to invest in some self-care. So as you all know, and as a lot of people are always, preaching on the internet, how important self-care is in general, not just when you're sick. So sometimes take some time to do a face mask, or to take a bath, or go treat yourself to a movie or something like that. There's a lot of emphasis these days, I feel like, on doing things that are self-care for yourself to keep yourself mentally well, even if you're not physically sick or having a real struggle. They're preventative measures. The same way that you might take vitamins on a daily basis to try to prevent yourself from getting sick. The same kind of thing can be said about the spiritual life as well. So what are we doing to invest in self-care for ourselves so that we don't get to the point where we're like dying, sick, can't function spiritually? How can we prevent that? We need to invest in some self-care. So putting a little extra emphasis on what we focus on during Lent. The prayer, fasting, and almsgiving are great ways for us to help ourselves spiritually and to kind of refocus ourselves. Lent gives you a great excuse to put aside those things that keep on distracting you from God and distracting you from, where your prayer life, where your spiritual life should be. I know I'm guilty of that, and I am making all my plans for Lent to try to reset myself, get in a better habit. So as we're gearing up for Lent, start thinking about those kinds of things. Another note that I was thinking about that I think kind of ties into this thought of mine is this piece of scripture. It's from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 22 and 23. So when you go to Ash Wednesday Mass or service on next Wednesday, you're going to hear the Gospel. It's right around this same part of the chapter. We hear about, on Ash Wednesday, the sections about Jesus' teaching about almsgiving and about prayer, and then he does the teaching about fasting. In between there, that we don't hear but is right in that same section, is when Jesus is teaching the Our Father. He teaches us how to pray, right? And then he's talking about storing up your treasure in heaven. We've heard that reading before. And then right after that, right in the same section of things that I think are a good start to Lent, right? That the idea of almsgiving, of fasting, of praying, of how to do those things, is this section that has a little subtitle in this Bible, at least. It says, The Light of the Body. If any of you know the musical Godspell, the newer version that was just on Broadway not that long ago, a couple of years ago, I love Godspell. I went to see it twice when it was on Broadway. They have a song that is focused on this piece of the gospel, this line. And it just popped into my head the other day. I haven't thought about it in a long time. So I thought maybe that's a sign that I should be sharing this with you. So here's what it says. The lamp of the body is the eye. If your eye is sound, your whole body will be filled with light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be in darkness. And if the light in you is darkness, how great will the darkness be? So this is that idea of, again, what are we kind of exposing ourselves to? If we're in the presence of things that are good and that are helping us grow, we're exposing our eyes to things that are good, things that are wholesome, things that are helping us spiritually. That's going to help fill us with light, help our spiritual journey, help us to be fed, right? And then we're going to be able to be doing so many more great things for God and spiritually because we're filled with light. But when our eyes get clouded with so much of the secular stuff of this world, like some trashy TV or things that take us away from God or distract us from God, even if they're not overtly against God, things that distract us from what we should be doing and from what's spiritually better for us, that clouds our eyes, and the light can't get in so easily then. The same way that if you pull a shade down on a window, if I pulled this shade down now, it would be hard to see me because the light wouldn't be coming in. It would be much darker in here. It'd be harder to see, harder to be doing things because it's dark, harder to see where you're going. So the same thing applies when we're exposing ourselves to things in the world, which there's a lot of these things that cloud our eyes, that kind of cover our eyes and shade our eyes and are letting things that are less than great into our mind, into our body. It hurts us spiritually. So another challenge for you, thinking about going into Lent, preparation for Lent, think about those things that are making your eye dark or clouding your eyes. Because when your eyes are clouded, when you're exposed to these things of the world that are not the best, it doesn't just have an effect on, your worldly self, it has an effect on your spiritual self. Because, like it says here, if your eye is bad, if your eye gets clouded, your whole body will be in darkness. Your whole soul will be in darkness. It'll slowly get darker and darker the more you expose yourself to these things that are dirtying up your window. And if the light in you is darkness, how great will the darkness be? We don't want to get to a point where we're in total darkness, where our spirits are in total darkness. So Lent, again, great time for preventative measures, for preventative self-care. So we're going to put on our spiritual face masks and put some cucumbers over our eyes, go to a spa day spiritually as we enter into Lent to help care for ourselves, care for our eyes, the windows to our soul, right? To help us to really draw closer to God, to take advantage of all the graces He has for us, and to push away those things that are making us sick so we don't get to the point where we need to, take a sick day spiritually. We want to prevent that. We want to stay well, take our spiritual vitamins, and that's what Lent is perfect for. So I'm challenging you this week to really think about those things that I've mentioned and come up with a solid game plan for what you're planning on doing this Lent. Whether it's giving up something that you think is clouding your eyes, or it's doing something extra, that's the spiritual self-care, preventative self-care. Think about what you think is gonna best serve you. Even if it's like a lot of things, it's a little over-ambitious. I would say what I like to do is I like to try to write down everything that I'm planning on trying to do in Lent. And I think, I'm probably being overzealous and I don't know that I'll be able to accomplish all of these things fully, but this is a good plan. These are things that I would like to do, things that I think would help me spiritually, that would help me get through this period of Lent and go on that walk with Jesus through the desert. And then if I don't accomplish all of them, then I still have a lot of other things that I have on my list. I'm not going to forget about them, that I can still be accomplishing to help me be well, to work on my spiritual self-care. So I would challenge you to come up with a list of at least a few things. I'd say at the very least you can come up with 2 things that will help you this Lent to participate in some spiritual self-care. Write down that list. Share with us down below in the comments what you think you might be planning on doing, because I see this all the time on the internet. Sometimes people post, "What are you doing for Lent?" And people post things that I would never in a million years think of doing, but would be really great for me. So then I usually steal their ideas and try to do them myself. So post down below, what are you planning to do this Lent? What are you giving up? What are you doing extra? What are you doing for your spiritual self-care? What face mask are you using? And share with us. We'll share as a community so that we're all prepared for next Wisdom Wednesday, next week, when we're beginning the Lenten journey. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. I hope you're all feeling healthy and well as I'm trying to make myself healthy and well. And we'll see you next week for Wisdom Wednesday on Ash Wednesday. God bless.